First, before we get started, thank you for liking, following, subscribing, hitting that notification bell for more information, be it education, insight, or engagement dealing with civics. So in this case, we're in this particular conversation, shout out dailymail.com. Now again, these type of articles that come up, I'm not saying I'm for or against them, but the type of career that I'm pursuing, especially when it comes to international relations, growing up in the United States of America, and focusing on international relations, traditionally to focus on international business development, post-secondary, or just education recruiting, and getting, and this is left field, but how does HBCUs connect with the African diaspora that's looking for an education in America? At the minimum, to include non-American workforce visas, those three areas. And so I've had an opportunity to dabble in a lot and experience a lot of international relations, especially in African diaspora activities and experiences. I'll put a link in the description on how you can follow my work and the work that I've done pertaining to international relations. But with that being said, I mean, even to the point of me getting actually registering, I'm a registered Lord of Glencoe in the country of Scotland, courtesy of Highland Titles, because of the satellite or virtual office, respectfully, that my firm has in regards to building a relationship in London, England, and the UK, and just serving as a brand and ambassador to bridge the gaps between urban areas and the corporate world. And as I do that within the United States, blending and building relationship and bridging gaps between corporate America and urban areas for a number of different reasons. To increase your customer base, to increase your presence in the community, and to make sure that those urban areas and those leaders and professionals have an opportunity to connect with the corporate sector for a number of different reasons: employment, contracting, subcontracting, fundraising, community engagement, just serving as that bridge. I'm giving you a whole synopsis just so that you can understand, where I'm coming from an international perspective. And this is something, if I were in that realm and working with some of these brands, will be at my table. And so if nothing else, where you want to be and where and your goals, start walking in that now as best you can. Like start walking in that and seeing where you can fit in and gain experience and build relationships. So that way, when situations do happen and opportunities where you can take advantage of those opportunities, you can actually say, hey, I have some experience doing this, that, and the third. And it just helps to break the ice. It helps create common ground. People are willing to invest in you when they see you investing in yourself. It's a whole other conversation, but just giving you some context. So shout out to dailymail.com. And this is by the AFP. Not quite sure what that is, but I don't want to click it to get too much off topic. But it says here, Blinken to refocus on Africa as Russia, China make gains. Key word here, refocus. And as I'm an advocate, of the country that I reside in, and again, follow my work as far as what I'm doing, as far as engagement and building relationships and bridging gaps. But I've always, and again, as corporations connect with me to help them increase their customer base and community presence in urban areas, that does go into civics and government relations, international relations. And I've always said respectfully that the United States, if nothing else, I would say needs to continue, maybe do more of, or just think about, Africa, and building that relationship. Because a lot of times I feel like, Africa does not get the proper recognition that it needs from America. And what I mean by that is when I have African dignitaries come into the areas that I serve, and I've been very fortunate to help host these African dignitaries through Dr. Erikana Shambori, former ambassador to the United Nations and being that liaison between the not United Nations, forgive me, I'm sorry, but African Union, forgive me. That's you got to know your facts. You got to speak on truth. Being the ambassador to the African Union during President Barack Obama's administration, she was the ambassador to the for the African Union and represented the African Union, was the liaison for the African Union to the United States and around the world, served as for a number of different years. And I was able to build a working relationship with Dr. Eric Kanashambori through my good friend Kwame Ahima. I want to shout him and his wife out. Kwame Ahima, and professor at a very prestigious university in Nashville. He's Ghanaian, if I pronounced that correctly, and I had an opportunity to help promote the 2014 and the 2015, I believe, Penafest. And it might have been 2013, 2014, but I think it's 2014 and the 2015. So two Penafest, where Kwame Ahima organized a celebration at the Global Mall in Nashville to celebrate the Ghanaian independence. Forgive my ignorance. It's been a minute, but having a chance to work with Kwame Ahima and promote the celebration of, I believe it's the independence of Ghana, and helping to raise funds and build strategic partnerships and doing those things. I had a chance to really build a relationship with him, and then eventually he introduced me to Dr. Erikana Shambori. She, at the time, she was the former, I don't even think she was the ambassador at the time. She became the ambassador eventually. So here I am working with the future ambassador of the African Union for a number of different years, building relationships, her and her great husband, Dr. Chow, inviting my wife and my children and I and my network. I have a picture of some of my closest guys, to the African House in Gallatin. The African House is a former plantation that Dr. Erikana Shambori and her husband purchased in Gallatin, Tennessee, and turned that into the African House. That's what it's called. And whenever the African dignitaries from around the continent of Africa come to Middle Tennessee, they're staying in this, and it's a nice home. It's like almost like a man. It's pretty much a mansion with acres and acres. And she bought that specifically because it was a slave plantation, and then transformed it into, actually having what was a former plantation, now housing a lot of the dignitaries. And so Nalika Mandela, the first granddaughter to Nelson Mandela, who nursed the late Nelson Mandela until he passed away, had a chance to represent and promote her work when she came into town. Dr. Joyce Banda, the first, I believe, the first woman president within the continent of Africa. She was a former president of the Republic of Malawi at that time, the second poorest country in Africa. The list goes on and on. My mind can't think right now, but I've even down to Ghanaian chiefs of tribes. Like when they came into town, it was great. It was a great experience. So you have to first walk into, is what I'm saying. And the way I started was by volunteering and just building relationships. And the way you do that is by volunteering a lot of times. That you donate your time and your talent, and opportunities do pop up. So here I am, getting a chance to work in that sector. I've had a few conversations with the Tennessee Labor and Workforce Department, and the state of Tennessee's Housing Department to see what it will look like to have non-American, what's the word I'm looking for? I had it down a while back. But non-American residents, I'll just say that, from African diaspora countries come to Tennessee to work. A lot of people aren't for that, And again, I do a lot of work with civics when it comes to political parties here in the U.S. And so I've heard a lot of perspectives. I was elected official for a particular party and the regional vice chair of this party for a county for 3 years. And built really great relationships, got some great experience, and then ended up not rerunning because I wanted to build relationships on the other side of the aisle. And you can see, through my YouTube channels and various social media platforms, how I've built relationships with the other side of the aisle, to the federal level, if you will. Not where I'm like boom coon, but building relationships where on the strength, if we see one another, it's a hey, how you doing? How's your families? And that's where it starts. I mean, I'm not, So the point of what I'm saying is, I've had a chance to see various perspectives, and I'm bringing it back to the non-immigrant workforce programs in the state of Tennessee. A lot of people aren't really for that, but it was an opportunity just to again build working relationships, opportunities. And this is because I recognize that the state of Tennessee has a lot of businesses overseas that invest within the state of Tennessee, and I didn't see any African-based countries. And I think there's like six consulates in the state of Tennessee. France, I think it's Sweden, and most of them are in Nashville, but none that are African based. Respectfully, that's not a big deal. But I look at, okay, what do you like to do? What are you good at? What do people need, and what do they want to pay you for? And you build from there. And so I feel like, hey, there needs to be stronger focus on the African diaspora at the state level as well as the federal level. I mean, I have footage and pictures of the council member at large that was running for office, that was running for mayor. Before he was running for mayor, he was the council at large, and he came down and he was running for mayor at this time. And during that time, he came down to serve as the guest speaker for the nonprofit Congo Renaissance Breath Corporation. And the Congo Renaissance Breath Corporation is a nonprofit based in Middle Tennessee that focuses on the advancement and well-being of the residents that move from the Democratic Republic of the Congo to Middle Tennessee, so they can have a community and a network, but they still focus on issues and focus and interest in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So I built great relationships with this sector and this bodies of individuals. And I mean, the access that I have to the natural resources within the Democratic Republic of the Congo, to include, elements and that pertain to lithium batteries and all those things, it's like right there. And my point is, the soon-to-be mayor, who was campaigning at the time, came down to serve as the guest speaker for the celebration of the independence of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So I promoted and helped host celebrations within Middle Tennessee for two different countries, Ghana and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And it's just on the strength of those, what work have you put in? I'm putting in work. A lot of it was volunteer, but you're building relationships. And the point is, the soon-to-be mayor came down to be the guest speaker, and actually the Office of New Americans for Metro Nashville government, they have an Office of New Americans. For those that are, Nashville is very diverse, and they call Antioch, an area of Nashville, Antioch, the baby United Nations, because there's over like 100 different, at least 50, over 50 different countries. And I think they said over like 100 different languages spoken in this one geographical area of Nashville. And so at one point there was a whole, and not getting off topic, just giving you some background as why we're jumping into this. There was a whole, English first bill that was pushed, I believe, at one time in Nashville, where they were saying, English only, because there were so many diverse languages in Nashville. I think that was voted down at the time, but it became a problem for schools, the public school system, because there were so many new Americans coming to Nashville. I think Nashville has the largest population of, on the tip of my tongue, what's going to come to me? The largest population of, it's right tip of my tongue, in America. It'll come to me. And y'all know what it is. Put it in the comments. Y'all know the largest population. But ultimately, I'm just giving you some background, as my focus has been on Africa, both genuinely and commercially. I say genuinely because we're human beings first. And I say commercially because you got to look at those aspects, So with that being said, here is the article. Blinken to refocus on Africa as Russia, China make gains. Got a picture here. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken delivers a speech during a session of the World Economic Forum in Davos on January 17th, 2024. So this wasn't just too long ago. And again, this article is not about who's not doing what, and it's not pointing any blame. It's just something that I know is good to hear, but it's good to hear, and I'm glad to see that this is brought up, and I'm curious to see what this article says. I haven't read the article yet. I'm not for or against the Daily Mail. It's not about trying to persuade. I'm just reading the article, and I just want to give you some of my story and my perspective, and what as I'm looking to serve as a senior advisor through experience and through access, through insight, through resources in the future. You got to walk into that. So U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, shout out, delivers a speech during a session of the World Economic Forum. That's a big deal. The World Economic Forum, check that out, look it up. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will visit sub-Saharan Africa for the first time in 10 months. I'm going to say that I don't know if they have a African diaspora office. I'm not saying, and of course, the U.S. Secretary of State, and for those that don't know, the U.S. Secretary of State, for those that don't know, let's see. What I'm doing is I'm looking up the role of U.S. Secretary of State, but it's not going to bring it up. I don't want to speak out of ignorance, but I know I don't want to speak out of ignorance. So the U.S. Secretary of State apparently does oversee to some degree, or represents to some degree in international relations. This is why it's important for us to any country, if you're looking from a national perspective, civics is so important, and the various branches is so important, and knowing the roles of certain executive offices and local offices and things and everything in between is so important. But U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will visit sub-Saharan Africa for the first time in 10 months. Which I don't know if that's good or not. If there needs to be more, but I'm curious to know if there's an office focused on African diaspora relations under the Honorable U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Continuing on, the State Department said Thursday, redirecting his focus as rivals Russia and China seek to gain there. And I just feel like, and that's fine. I'm not against that at all. But I feel like you want to position yourself before stuff hits the fan, so you can at least come off as genuine. And this is what I do as a corporate ambassador, or an ambassador for corporations. Like, you don't want to do the PR thing when it's time or something pops up, because when it's crunch time, people are focused, they're passionate, and they're looking at really what you've done beforehand, before stuff hit the fan. That's the only leeway you're going to get when it comes to local communities. What have you done? And they'll judge it from there. But if you haven't done nothing and you're not showing up, and then all of a sudden we got to talk about something essential, you already it's an uphill battle. Put it like that. It's an uphill battle, and all you can do at the bottom of the hill, and it's an uphill battle, is to treat people as genuinely as you can, with the respect that they deserve as human beings and as a point of focus in the district, community, or area that you have interest in for whatever reason as to why you're talking with them. And that's just coming from experience. I've ran for office. I've been elected official. I've served on several various different campaigns. I have strong working relationships with people in office from the local to federal level, in which they ask for my insight for a number of different things. I'm in the room enough to know what to do and what not to do, and it's not my business. I've learned a lot. So what I'm saying is, bringing it back, redirecting is a word that you really don't want to use. I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm not pointing any fingers, but I'm looking at, how can I learn? So when I'm in a position where I have opportunities, these are the things that I'm just keeping in mind and noting, so that way I can be a good advisor to the sources that I'm dealing with. But redirecting, is you want to prevent that, and you want to direct it from the very beginning and continue to have it directed. So that way people can feel comfortable, build a relationship, because it looks like all of a sudden, respectfully, other countries want to build relationships, and these other countries are, competing against you. And then all of a sudden you want to, build the relationship. And it's too late, because I served, and not saying it's too late, I served as an admissions representative for a career college, and for a number of years, in which my role was to pretty much take these leads that were given to me through advertising means and see if these prospects wanted to come in and take a tour of our career college, and in hopes of enrolling them into the next semester. And so I would basically all day, I had a bunch of leads in my computer system, in which I got on the phone and dialed. A lot of the leads came from people that were on a site and clicked an ad and that had nothing to do with going to college or career college, but that was a lead. And so a lot of people called and said, "No, I didn't press this or wasn't interested. Stop calling me." But then you had some that may have pressed and never thought about it, and so I am looking to pursue and increase my career training or whatever. And so my point is, I was an admissions representative for a number of years at a career college, and then I ended up becoming the director of admissions for this career college, in which I had the technical skills, and then I learned the management skills. I had a chance to be, on the management side of things, in which I was working with the regional director of admissions and the campus director on various conversations dealing with enrollment relations, as well as staying within the policies of the education department at the state and federal level. So I had a lot of insight, and my point is, I'll never forget, I was told, I won't throw out who said it, but a lot of times when you're making these phone calls, it's important to reach these leads when you first get them, reach out to them quickly, because I don't know where I got the source from, but I was always told that 82% of the people that get reached out to first, or 82% of the people that talk with someone that reach out to them first, that's usually who they're going to go with if you have a strong conversation with, because you reached out to them first. 82% of those that reach out to you first, you tend to go with, unless you have a different feeling. And that's why it was very important. I don't know if that was just a way to make us dial the phone faster, or if that was just true facts. But I always kept that with me. And you always want to get somewhere first, is my point, because now you have position. It's like when you play basketball and you want to get a rebound. If you can get in good position to box out, not only do you have a higher probability of getting a rebound, but you have a higher probability of the opponents, or the ops, as they say, drawing a foul, because now they're over your back. They jumped over your back or did something to try to get and try to take over your positioning when you were already established. And now it's a foul on them. It's a penalty on them. An individual foul on the individual, and a team foul for the team, for the entire team, in which you're shooting free throws after a number of different team fouls, if that makes sense. So I'm just bringing this up as far as perspective of what I'm thinking when I'm reading this article, and what we can all think about. So I'll read that sentence again. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will visit sub-Saharan Africa for the first time in 10 months, the State Department said Thursday, redirecting his focus as rivals Russia and China seek gain there. After 4 frenetic tours of Middle East since war broke out on October 7th, with a Hamas attack on Israel, Blinken will visit Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Angola, and Cape Verde starting Monday. I'm curious as to why those areas. I don't know. So I'm reading this, I would want to start to research these areas. And anything you research, you want to find out the origin, the purpose, and the function, is what I was taught going through my career. So I definitely want to find out the origin, purpose, and the function of these countries, and what their current events are, as to why the U.S. Secretary of State is heading there first. Blinken will discuss economic growth and advanced security partnerships based on shared values such as respect for human rights, promotion of democracy, and expansion of the rule of law. And this is when State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said. Now, the areas that I have highlighted, if you're listening to this content through with visual included, and if you're watching this compared to the audio, I highlighted economic growth and quote advanced security partnerships based on shared values as respect for human rights, promotion of democracy, and expansion of the rule of law. End quote. Now, when I read that, now you're talking about diplomacy. Now you're talking about chess because you have various cultures, and you got to look at the need in this conversation. You look at the culture. So if I was on the side and represent Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Angola, Cape Verde, because again, I'm always thinking from American perspective. So I'm looking at it from the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's perspective, or maybe what his mission may be. But as I read this, I'm thinking, okay, you are a bridge, which means you have to have kind of a relationship with both sides. So therefore, I'm looking at it from my Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Angola, Cape Verde situation. And so if I'm looking and I'm an advisor, I'm listening, I'm on fly on the wall, and we jump into economic growth and advancing security partnerships based on shared values such as respect for human rights, promotion of democracy, and expansion of the rule of law, I'm going to now start to get into, I would advise, okay, first of all, keep your culture in mind. Now, I'm not saying your culture is right or wrong, but keep your culture in mind. And then also, what do they mean when they say economic growth? Like, what are we talking about here? And then you ask a billion questions from that. You write down everything and you record it so that way you can go back to your team and y'all can go back and revisit what was said, because you got to make sure it's aligned with what you have going on. So you're looking at the economic growth, but then you're also looking at what is your viewpoints when it comes to, or your approach, or your idea or advocacy when it comes to advanced security partnerships based on shared values. So that's the thing right there. Because when I see advanced security partnerships, I think of national security. National security is huge if you're talking, nationalism, if you will. National security, both foreign and domestic, is huge. You got to keep those things in mind. So when we're talking about advancing security partnerships based on shared values, you got to first know what your values are. So if I'm Nigeria, Ivory Coast, Angola, Cape Verde, do not get in these conversations without first knowing your values, which I know they know. But this is me if I was an advisor to anybody, a small business owner, entrepreneur, what are your values? Because now we're talking national security. We're talking big, this is it. Like, in national security comes a lot of ways. And one thing we're talking about is human rights. I'm not saying what's right or wrong for anyone at this point. What I'm saying is, first of all, as a country, what are your respects to human rights? And what do you value when it comes to human rights? Get that down. When it comes to democracy, what are your values when it comes to democracy as a culture? Write those down. And when it comes to expansion of the rule of law, what are your values what are your views and what are your perspectives, but also your values of the rule of law? Because you have to first know thyself and examine yourself. So that way you can be a strong ambassador and representative and diplomat for yourself with a whole nother body, respectfully. With a whole nother entity, with a whole nother brand, with a whole nother source. And because the idea is, like spokesman Matthew Miller said, it's about partnerships based on shared values. So if you don't know what your values are, how can someone, you're doing a disservice to the other side talking to you, because they're gonna know their values, and they're gonna hit you with the best proposition from their perspective. And you got to hit them with the best proposition from your perspective so y'all can begin the negotiation process. And that's what this is. This is the U.S. Secretary of State coming to begin the negotiation process for economic growth and advanced security partnerships based on shared values such as respect for human rights, promotion of democracy, and expansion of the rule of law. So you got to know your stuff, your culture, and your perspectives so that you can have a conversation. If not, you're doing the other side disservice because they're trying to, look out for themselves, and they're hoping you do the same for you. And you're doing a disservice to yourself because you were not prepared. I'm not saying these are things that are happening. These are things that come to my mind and what we should all focus on as we're going through our life, not only personally, but professionally and civically. On Blinken's last visit to sub-Saharan Africa, he became the highest ranking U.S. official ever to visit Niger, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, hoping to champion the fragile democracy, also a frontline country in the fight against Sahel jihadists. So, indirectly and respectfully, Blinken did visit sub-Saharan Africa, and he became the highest ranking U.S. official ever to visit Niger. I'm going to say that, or Niger, which is cool. And as that happens, there needs to be more high-ranking officials visiting these countries. Now, I'm sure a lot of these high-ranking officials have visited a lot of countries in Africa. I'm not, and again, so right now I'm speaking out of ignorance. And what I'm saying is, I think the various countries in Africa are looking to get on the same page. So yeah, you talk to one, but at the same time, or you talk to 10 or 15, but at the same time, you got to recognize these countries you're talking to are also talking to their neighbors to get on one accord. So you have to really be able to say, hey, country, not only am I talking to you, but I'm talking with your neighbor or these people, and these people are going to, these countries are going to talk to other countries to see if you are okay, and you want to be able to say, you want to be able to have various countries in Africa say, yeah, I talked to this representative or official, they're cool. The more of those you get from the country's partners and neighbors that you're talking to, the better it is and at ease they're going to be. It's not just you coming out of nowhere to try to get something, and respectfully, it looks like there's something going on against the fight of Sahel jihadists, so therefore I can see why an official came to Niger to talk with them. Now, again, I always say, try to talk to folks well in advance before anything jumps off, so it doesn't look like you're coming for a reason. I'm just saying that from the lower end scale of community engagement with corporate bodies, and they want to engage, urban areas, really to increase their customer base or their presence in the community. And that can go all the way up to real estate community engagement when a development firm or a development company wants to build a commercial or residential site or building or park, and they have to get community buy-in from the local residents. And you, as a corporate brand, have not built the relationship well in advance to even say, hey, you know what? We're not even, in a few years. Some people, and it's hard because it's not something that people can determine beforehand. But the bottom line is, once you recognize a territory that you're looking to develop in, even when it's an idea, you want to go ahead and start getting down there as soon as possible to build those relationships, and kind of low key let people know, what your plans are and what you have going as early as possible. And it's not about having the people dictate what you have going on as a corporation and a development, but it's a catch-22. It's you have to give the people the respect because it's their territory. Does that make sense? So I know if it's illegal for you to do what you can do and all that, I get it from a commercial perspective, but we're talking about engagement. We're talking about spiritual karma. A lot of that plays a role with me. You want to treat people the way they deserve to be treated. And what I mean by that is, if you know something's about, you have a mission, get out there early and let people know what's going on, and they can let you know, hey, we don't want to do this. We don't want to do this. We're not with it. And you want to let them know as early as possible, because you want them, they're going to try to stop you or whatever the case may be. I'm talking about from a professional business standpoint. They're going to try to stop you and all that. But if nothing else, they can never say that you did not keep it real with them. You did not keep it 100 with them. You did not give them as much advance notice for them to get prepared for what they have to do as you're preparing to do what you have to do. And at all times during this process, you still want to keep the line of communication open because you want to build a working relationship and find a win-win deal as best you can. It may not be possible, but they're going to at least give you, they may not respect you to where they like you, but they're going to respect you from a corporate brand of you not doing something underhanded or waiting to the last minute. And you're actually helping the PR, public relations of the corporate world, because a lot of people already have their backs turned or they're tense because the corporate industry already has this stigma of looking out for the people last. So even though we're talking about one development and one, situation in one small geographical location, your one is actually playing a role physically and spiritually in the perception of the corporate industry, PR, if that makes sense. So each person has to do their part. So going back to the article, I'll reread this last sentence. On Blinken's last visit to sub-Saharan Africa, he became the highest-ranking U.S. official ever to visit Niger. I'll say that, hoping to champion the fragile democracy. Okay. Also, a frontline country in the fight against Sahel jihadists. And when you're at the front line, I mean, your position is very important. Where you're located is very important. So I think that's more of a focus than championing the fragile democracy. Because if that were the case, those things should already be happening well in advance. Just kind of giving you a perspective, not right, wrong, or indifferent. Just a perspective that if you are America or you are a corporation, that I'm letting you know what the other side might think or be thinking. Because I come from the other side and I engage with the other side. I respect the other side as far as communities, lower, urban areas, lower income communities, working communities. I've had a chance to really, be a part of that. And from that, I've been able to build and be a bridge builder with corporate America. I don't come from, or corporations. I don't come from the corporate world and looking to engage with the urban areas. I come from the urban areas and been able to build something that can not only be monetized, but also is essential in a work relationship with the corporate world. So I'm always coming from and that's what corporations see as valuable. They don't see me from a corporate perspective as valuable. They see me from an urban perspective as valuable. So I'm always looking at it from the urban side, like, hey, if you're not coming correct like this, they're going to see through that, and it's going to be worse. So come correct or don't come at all.